I've never met anyone in my life who can hold so much data and so much information and say it in a way that's fascinating, succinct, and totally makes sense. Because this is a challenging issue. GMOs and the technology around this, it's complex, it's complicated, understanding all these different issues, and Jeffrey has a way of knowing exactly how and when to say what piece of data, and he's a great teacher at it too. He is the leading consumer advocate promoting a healthier non-GMO life. He's the director of the Institute for Responsible Technology, and his first book, Seeds of Deception, which I love the subtitle, Exposing Industry and Government Lies About the Safety of the Genetically Engineered Foods You're Eating. It's a wonderful book, and it's a great first book. And Jeffrey, we're so thrilled to have you here again today and doing all the work that you're doing to make this change happen.
Hello again, Moran. I come to Marin a lot because my brother's here. Hi, Rick. And it feels like a second home. And I've often tried to actually move here for months at a time, but I couldn't find a house-sitting situation. But I'll get there eventually. Maybe when I put myself out of a job this year, I can retire here. How many of you would like to see labels on genetically modified foods? Raise your hand. Okay. Let's give applause for that, okay? All right, how many of you do not want to see labels on genetically modified foods? Look around for the Monsanto plant. How many have not yet decided? How many don't like raising their hand? All right.
No worries.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to share a personal story and give a talk that I've never given before. And it's going to track my personal messaging progress and also what I'm seeing reflected in the change in collective consciousness regarding GMOs. I've been working on this issue since 1996, when I heard a scientist describe the scientific reasons why genetically engineered foods could be an unprecedented catastrophe. We talked about the self-propagating genetic pollution that can outlast the effects of global warming and nuclear waste, and how the products of this infant science, this faulty technology, are being fed to everyone who eats. And so, over the few years of my local activism, I decided to create a strategy to get through the noise, to get people interested in GMOs, where most people had never heard of them and did not want to read a scientific book. And by 2002, there were some terrific stories. If you happen to not been involved in the actual story, the story of Dr. Arpad Pusztai, who was fired from his job and stripped of responsibilities and gagged when he discovered how dangerous genetically modified food was. Or Ignacio Chapella from UC Berkeley, who was about to release research on how the indigenous corn varieties in Mexico had been contaminated with genetically modified corn, but had been summoned by a senior Mexican government official, who, Ignacio told me, threatened him, implying, "We know where your children go to school," trying to get him not to publish the evidence. How Fox TV reporters from a Tampa news station were about to release a 4-part news series on Monsanto's bovine growth hormone and its link to cancer. But 3 days before the news series ran, an attorney from Monsanto wrote a letter to Fox corporate headquarters. So they stopped it, reviewed it, it passed the review, it was rescheduled, a new letter was written, promising dire consequences to Fox or Rupert Murdoch by Monsanto if they ran this 4-part news series. And it was ultimately canceled. We described how, in the book that I was envisioning, it was going to be stories that were going to be emotionally impactful. So I was looking for hooks of stories. So in one chapter, it was about a woman with incredible pain, which was typical of those with EMS, eosinophilia myalgia syndrome, a disease created by genetically modified L-tryptophan. And yet the FDA hid that information from Congress and from the general public in order to protect the reputation of biotechnology. So by 2002, I had been accumulating these stories, and my focus was on waking people up about GMOs by giving the story hook. So they didn't have to be concerned about GMOs in the beginning, but they wanted to start a book and get caught into what happened to Dr. Arpad Pusztai by the end of the chapter, and then talking about the outrage and the horrific treatment of truth and science and integrity at the hands of the biotechnology companies and their enforcement wing, the FDA. So the first round of my travels was with Seeds of Deception, and it became the world's best-selling book on the subject because that particular formula at that particular time was a good fit. And as I went around the world, at the end of the book, actually, I promised, or I said I would, I didn't quote promise, but I told everyone that I was going to write another book about the environment using the same story format. But when I traveled around the world with Seeds of Deception, giving it to cabinet ministers and senators and congressmen, I gave it to them and I realized they'll never read the book because they don't have the time. They need quick reference material. We got lucky in Vermont when a co-op gave a copy of Seeds of Deception to every member of the legislature, and they were looking at the first state legislation on GMOs, and a person actually did a master's thesis on the impact of the book, and it turns out it was pivotal in that case. People started reading it, they said they couldn't put it down because the story stuck, and they read the whole book and it changed their vote, and it was very helpful. But in general, Seeds of Deception was basically, it was very interesting. I remember going to the WTO in Cancun, and I'd meet these ministers of finance and ministers of trade and from Africa and all over the world, and I'd give them the book, and I'd say, it turns out that genetically engineered foods aren't safe, and they were put on the market based on industry manipulation and political collusion, and they'd go, yeah, that makes sense. And then they'd ask me to sign it. And then they'd put it away. And so I realized I didn't want to write the next book, because what I was doing is I was traveling around the world. I was interviewing the campaigners in 25 countries and in most states, asking them, what are you doing on GMOs? What is working and what is not? And I realized, even more than I had before, that we had the most powerful strategy in hand already occurred in Europe. When Arpad Pusztai's gag order was lifted on February 16, 1999, a firestorm of media turned GMOs into a marketing liability within 10 weeks. Unilever publicly committed to stop using GM ingredients in its European brands by the end of April. Earlier that year, in January, before the gag order was lifted, the biotechnology industry at a San Francisco conference boldly projected that they would have 95% replacement of all commercial seeds within 5 years. But their fortunes were derailed by this unexpected incident which drove GMOs out of the market in Europe. And it was not the government that did it. It was the citizens saying, we don't want to eat it. And we calculated how many people in America would be required to create a tipping point here. And we think 5%, because the same companies that got rid of GMOs in Europe, if they see any drop in market share in the United States, because of anti-GMO sentiment growing, it becomes the food industry sell signal that caused them all to kick it out over there. So I realized environmental books are not going to do it. I've got to go back and do another book on the health dangers. But by this time, we had the attention of the world. There's many groups around the world, including my Institute for Responsible Technology, that was getting the word out. We had the attention, but now we needed to convince the politician and their staff and key decision makers. And they weren't reading the stories. So I wrote Genetic Roulette, which is a book that every left side of the page is a summary for the attention deficit politician. And the right side of the detailed cited text for the staff, etc. And that was out there. I mean, from an economic perspective, I certainly wasn't writing it to make money, because you're spending 2 years shepherding 30 scientists to read everything 3 times and stuff, to get a book out that was going to be used by activists who were going to ask to get it for free, so that they can give it to politicians. And by the way, a donor has donated part of the cost of the stack of genetic roulettes in the back, so instead of being $28 or $10, and I'm doing that tonight so that you can get it out to the left brain friends of yours, so that they can learn what's going on with GMO. So this was the left brain book, whereas Seeds of Deception was the right brain book. And I started going out with genetic roulette, and it was very interesting. Around that time, I started to be invited to medical conferences. First the naturopaths and American Academy of Environmental Medicine and ACAM and all these groups. And I realized, I wasn't expecting it, but the book Genetic Roulette became the tool for the medical profession to get around this issue in so many instances. So when I went to the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, and they're a very interesting group. They're like the Sherlock Holmes detectives, trying to figure out what's changing in the health in the United States and why. So their first group to discover or to identify food allergies, chemical sensitivity, Gulf War syndrome, and about 18 different problems or solutions that are now well recognized. And so I was giving them information about GMOs, and then they started doing evaluations of GMOs directly and published a policy paper on it in 2009. Now, when I was writing Genetic Roulette, I was married to the scientists in the sense that I had to accurately represent what they were saying in the kind of, well, it might and it may and it suggests and it appears. You know, if it's raining outside, they'll say it appears that it might be raining. This is how the scientists think. And so I was gaining their trust, I had gained their trust, and I wanted to accurately represent their opinions in the literature that we were producing. And they're all about the potential for problems, the theoretical risks, and always being very, very careful not to overstate anything. But when I read the policy of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, it was stronger than I've ever written. It was stronger than I've ever said. It was saying there's clear causal relationships between the GMOs fed to animals in laboratory experiments and things like reproductive in the behavior and the GI tract problems, including one of the fathers who was an oncologist and hematologist and looked very carefully and said certainly the GMO removal was a big factor in the improvement of our son. And if you look at autism and you look at the intestinal problems, one thing that comes up a lot is leaky gut, intestinal permeability. Now, intestinal permeability is linked to allergies, it's linked to autoimmune disease, to inflammation, to Alzheimer's, to Parkinson's. What can break holes in the walls of our intestines? Do you know how Bt corn works? Bt toxin. You take genes out of soil bacteria. If you just take the soil bacteria and you spray it as a spray, it's designed to break open the stomach of insects and kill them. But they say, don't worry, humans. It doesn't affect humans at all. No effect on our cells, and it's destroyed in your digestive tract. Until 2 months ago, when they found in the Journal of Applied Toxicology, when they took Monsanto's corn and isolated the Bt toxin and exposed it to human cells, it broke holes in the cells, causing leakage. And the author said this may be the exact mechanism that it's used to kill insects. And last year, in Canada, they found the Bt toxin in 93% of the pregnant women in their bloodstream. So it not only survived digestion, it entered the blood, and 80% of their unborn fetuses. And the fetuses don't have a developed blood-brain barrier, so what happens when the Bt toxin gets in their brain? Now, Bt would probably wash out of the blood very quickly. So how come 93% of the Canadians that don't eat corn tortillas every day have Bt toxin in their blood. Well, the authors of the study suggested that it was the milk and meat of animals that do eat Bt corn every day that must have survived digestion in the animal, and then the protein survived digestion in the human, and then got into the bloodstream. I think there's a different explanation that might be more plausible. The only human feeding study ever published showed that part of the genes from soybeans that make the soybeans Roundup ready transfer into the DNA of bacteria living inside our intestines. That bacteria was unkillable with Roundup. It was Roundup ready gut bacteria, suggesting that the transferred gene continued to function. If the Bt gene transfers from corn chips into our gut bacteria, it might turn it into living pesticide factories. I think that is probably why 93% of pregnant women in Canada and probably in the United States have Bt in their blood, and the unborn fetuses. So if we're producing Bt toxin, which is a known allergen, which also is an irritant, which also drills holes in human cells, if we're colonizing the gut bacteria of North Americans with this, that could explain why multiple chronic illnesses in the United States practically doubled from 1996 to 2004. Why so many people are sick. And on top of that, this is an update for those of you who've been following it. There's a new organism. I mean, as if that weren't bad enough, right? It's like, don't tell me anymore, I gotta go. No, truly, don't leave in the middle, you'll be depressed. Wait till the end, there's good news. But not yet. I'm not letting you go yet. I got 7 more minutes, and you're mine. Because the thing is, I still have a job to get humans up to the level of animals, and animals spontaneously avoid GMOs. We need a little nudging. So, this new organism was found in high concentrations in the aborted fetal tissue of animals that were having high rates of miscarriages. So in farms and ranches, they were having lots and lots of miscarriages or infertility, and they found this new organism that was tiny, the size of a virus, looked like a fungus. And they have since taken it out and exposed it to a pregnant chicken and killed the embryo within 48 hours. They found it in high concentrations in feed that was sprayed with Roundup, and in diseased plants where the Roundup is known to produce those diseases. And so they're looking at it, and this was all leaked on the internet, which is why I can talk about it, in a letter to Secretary Vilsack by an incredibly credentialed man, Dr. Don Huber. Not only is he one of the world's experts at plant pathology, at the very highest level on the planet, and an expert at Roundup, he was a colonel in the military working in the intelligence agencies to guard against the outbreak of diseases, both man-made and natural. And in his letter to the Secretary of Agriculture, he said, it is of a high-risk status, in layman's terms, it's an emergency. And asked two simple things. One, can we work together to understand it, to see what level of threat it is, and how to remediate? And two, can you hold off on Roundup-ready alfalfa? Because that'll increase the amount of Roundup used and could exacerbate a problem which is already threatening production agriculture. He was ignored on both counts. It wasn't until the letter was leaked into the public domain that someone called him up and said, okay, we'll talk to you about it. And he gave the names of the people to follow up. They never followed up for 6 months. So we have the particular organism, the entity, as Dr. Don Huber likes to call it, which is maybe responsible for the high rates of infertility in animals, possibly humans, but that also competes with Roundup itself, which disrupts estrogen production and causes birth defects, and is linked to cancer and Parkinson's, and that's in our food, and also Roundup chelates and binds to nutrients, making them unavailable, and nutrients are very important for reproductive processes, so there's all sorts of perfect storm elements out there, just based on Roundup. So you got Roundup on one side, Bt toxin on the other, and you have no one in America waking up in the morning saying, I'd like my daily dose of Roundup or Bt toxin. Imagine that. So this actually turns out, even though it's horrible and horrific to think about, right now we have so much evidence. It is so easy to change people's diet on the spot. Typically I ask an audience to rate themselves from 1 to 100, how vigilant you've been at avoiding GMOs, but you're from Marin, so either you're very vigilant or you're going to lie about it. No one wants to admit they eat GMOs in this crowd, right? And then at the end of the lecture, I say, rate yourself how vigilant you'll be next week at avoiding GMOs, and everyone changes, and we can do it very quickly. At Greenfest a few months ago, I did it in 11 minutes. But I'm from New York, I can talk fast. They don't understand me in Iowa. That's where I live. It's been a problem. So we have a situation now where we can change someone's diet on the spot. We can get an awareness about GMOs, we can get a motivation about GMOs, and we can motivate behavior change. And if you track what's been happening over the last few years, you can see that that actually is leaking into collective consciousness and making a change. And that change is visible right here today as to why we're here. The whole labeling issue. I think that as people become aware of the problems of GMOs, a natural consequence is to want the GMOs labeled. Now, the voluntary labeling of non-GMO has become one of the fastest growing label claims in America for the last 3 or 4 years. And that's because of this rising collective awareness. We think it's because of the concern about the health dangers. And there's now thousands of people involved in activism and outreach, and we had to catch up by creating a Tipping Point network. If you'd like to join us, go to responsibletechnology.org and join the Tipping Point network and join with local groups in your area. Right now, Pam has captivated them all and captured them because they're all doing ballot initiatives, stuff. But we're going to last beyond that too. And people are learning to speak on GMOs. We've taught about 750 people. We're doing a speaker training in the East Bay on Monday night, which is just a 3-hour piece before the elevator speech and also about how to talk about labeling. So that's on our website. So we're all of a sudden engaged and barely able to keep up. We had to hire a bunch of people just to focus on California, way beyond our means. And by the way, we have some good news. You may have heard of Mercola.com, a very popular website. They're very strong in the anti-GMO positioning. They're willing to give a $1 matching donation. Anyone that donates money to the Institute for Responsible Technology, they'll match it with $1 towards the California ballot initiative, up to 100 grand. And even though I joke and say I'm trying to put myself out of a job, if we don't get money, I'll be doing it prematurely. So we have some envelopes in the back that you can make donations with and indicate whether it's credit card or check, etc. And it's very, very much needed for us to even get through the election and on to the end of the year, because we have realized that in order for us to be effective, we needed a lot of people, more than we could afford, and we did gamble on that. And so we're having our own gamble. Right now the biotech industry is gambling with all of our lives. We figured we can gamble a little bit with stopping them. So we've seen a change in collective consciousness. We've seen a change in the awareness right now. And Robin brought it out very strongly in the last 14 months, right? You started 14 months ago, what's a GMO? Now it's like everyone knows. Well, these are the early signs of a tipping point. The early signs of a tipping point, and I think it's going to happen both at the ballot box and at the cash register. Now, if it does, if there is a deflation of the fortunes of genetically modified organisms in our food supply in the United States, that is a game changer around the world. Because if you read WikiLeaks, and you find the ambassador to Spain saying, I just met with the Monsanto director of the region, and we would like Washington to help the government of Spain to be stronger in its GMO position, or the ambassador to France saying we should write up a retaliation list against all the countries that are trying to block GMOs and, quote, cause some pain. And you have all this, the USAID and the State Department and the USDA all marching lockstep with Monsanto. If we can deflate their influence on the US government by causing the tipping point of consumer rejection with GMOs here, then we change the entire political landscape around the world. So it's an extremely leveraged action right now. The whole world into America, all of America into California, and basically California into November 6th. And right now, if you look at California, what is the region where the warriors are the strongest, where the choir is being armed to get active? That's Marin County. So I'm starting my tour here in California in Marin County. So Pam is going to talk to you about the labeling issue, which I'm going to leave for her. And I want to say this. This is an opportunity not to let slip away. Now I'm going to give you some excuses. You can feel like you're not them. You can be woken up in the morning, in the middle of the day, 3 a.m. by your great-great-great-great-grandchild. How's that for like guilt? Here's another way of thinking about it. When in life, when in the history of human civilization, have human beings had an opportunity to make such a positive impact? Because if you think about GMOs, as we discussed earlier, they can negatively affect all living beings, all future generations. The stated goal of the biotechnology industry was to genetically engineer 100% of all commercial seeds. Now they've added livestock, now they've added insects, now they've added fish. They want to replace nature, to permanently change the face of the planet, to own it, and to control it. And if they decide, well, it was a mistake after all, the technology doesn't work, there's no recall. So if you think about the opportunity in front of us to stop this unprecedented danger, no one in history has had this opportunity to have such a positive influence on the entire planet today and all future generations. And I think we're equipped. I think we're actually sloping up right now. And I've looked back at the 16 years that I've been involved in this. This is unprecedented. This is unprecedented. We've never had this much energy. We've never had 20 states introducing labeling bills as we did this year, illustrating, reflecting the change in collective thinking. And we've never had this much evidence about how dangerous GMOs are. So it's much easier to enlighten someone and to cause behavior change, as well as to get a vote. Now, obviously, with the votes, you don't have to go into a 40-minute speech and talk about turning your intestinal flora into living pesticide factories. You can say you're in favor of GMOs or not. You can both enjoy, you can both get behind labeling. You want to eat a GMO, fine. You got to label it to know it's there. Or you can simply say, it's the same companies that told us Agent Orange and DDT and PCBs were safe, and they're the ones that determine if their foods are safe. You want to try it, or you want to avoid it? You can't avoid it because they don't tell you. You sure you don't want to vote for Prop 37? So there's a lot of ways to get the information out without having to be an expert, and I recommend strongly that you get the materials to create a lending library and commit now to circulate the books, the films, the pamphlets, the brochures, to become a click and send revolutionary. Because we're going to be facing a huge disinformation campaign, multi-million-dollar campaign to erode our nearly 3-to-1 advantage right now in the polls. And the way that we can win is if everyone participates as a member of the network, as a member of the human race, as a member of all the species that are rooting for us to win, to get this stuff labeled so people can make the right choice to avoid it, so we can all see the difference in our lives and to usher this out. So this is an opportunity that I'm so glad to be here in Marin with you. Because I'm launching my personal trip through California from here, and it's wonderful to be here with you again on this GMO issue, and I'm hoping that next time that I'm back, it's the victory lap.
Right on.
Conscious living. I'm speaking with Elio Kaplan right now. We're at the GMO Symposium, Jeffrey Smith. What do you know, Elio, about GMO?
What do I know about GMO? Now that I had a chance to listen to the speakers tonight, well, I heard the term GMO many years ago, but I didn't know that there wasn't a movement yet to really label food. And I was assuming, like everyone else, that somebody was already at work to make sure that GMOs weren't, in all the foods.
So you knew about GMO before you came this evening?
Yeah, I knew about GMO, but I didn't realize just how much of a health risk it really is to everybody.
So you were informed about this evening?
The health risk.
Jeffrey Smith is now taking a turn to talk about the farm animals and the health issues. Why do you think you're not talking about the studies in humans about the health? No doctors, so the data's not there.
And it's pretty hard to answer that question. I don't. I'm pretty informed living here in Marin, so there's a lot of people that I talk to that know what healthy eating is. But I kind of knew GMO was not a good thing, but there was no way to know if the GMO was going to be in foods or not. I was just kind of assuming you just avoid certain foods, but that's not enough because some soy is non-GMO and some soy isn't. So there's a lot of knowledge here tonight, or a lot of knowledge I have to now start to educate myself a little bit more so that I can really take on healthy eating habits, not just for me, but for everyone else that I know. Because it's not just about organic. So now I'm confused. Eating organic isn't really the final answer.
There could be GMO in the organic.
I'm not sure about that, but I think that's what he was saying, one of the speakers. Organic wasn't the final answer. It has to be, non-GMO organic.
Would you personally eat GMO and give it to your children and your family or your loved ones? Would you be okay with that today to do that?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. So how do I know that I'm avoiding GMO when I go to a restaurant or when I go to food shopping? Unfortunately, I shop at some pretty healthy places, but now I think I'm going to ask more questions on a regular basis when I go and anywhere to eat. I want to take kind of control of my own eating habits, eat more at home instead of at restaurants because we just don't have time to trust or ask, questions at the restaurants, which is excellent because I'm going in that direction anyway. So this kind of pushes me to realize I am powerful enough to control my eating habits even better than they already are.
For your health reasons.
Fortunately,
definitely.
I'm healthy, so I haven't had to really. So I'm not here just for me. I'm here because the bigger picture is what kind of a healthy planet are we leaving? And it doesn't sound too good, but she's so inspiring that we can make change. So none of us have to get depressed, but we can really take action. And so we'll definitely take action tonight. Get on Facebook or talk to friends and get the word out that pass this initiative. Number 37.
Elliot, there was a great emphasis this evening on they need help. Jeffrey Smith needs help. The other person who's trying to get it on the ballot. Every single person in the panel stressing they need help via money, through talking to others, through any means that one can do. What would you recommend to your friends? How can they help? It's all an individual thing, but we all have to do this together. It's not just you or a few people. It's all of us together connecting.
Just take small steps, not get overwhelmed by it, but just first get this thing passed. Once it gets passed, I think, like anything, you have to figure out where is our money best spent. So I'm going to start researching all the different factors and forces that came together tonight and see exactly, what we can do. There seems to be a lot of momentum going on, but so I don't really know what I can do, what I need to do yet. I still have to do research, but just make sure the initiative gets passed.
Thank you. It's such an honor and a great pleasure to speak to you this evening, and thank you for your very, very informative talk. I interviewed a lot of people before you, and they were completely amazed at all the great health information that you were talking about. Thank you again for your great, important work. If you didn't exist, what chance would we have here? So the initiative in November, what can people actually do on their families and their friends to make sure that this happens and this ballot is passed in November in California?
Well, there'll be a number of things for people to do. There'll be opportunities for people to phone bank and call others, to be click and send revolutionaries and share things, to get out on the street. I think it's best to hook up with the organizations that are going to be giving people different ideas. And principally, labelgmos.org to sign up to become a volunteer and hook up with the group in your area. And also go to responsibletechnology.org, which is our site, and join the Tipping Point Network so that people can, and then sign up for our Spilling the Beans newsletter for sure, so we can continue to inform. As we inform, you can send that to your friends, post it on Facebook, tweet it out, etc. So there's a combination of things. One is just the information about GMOs to get it out there and be extremely active about that right now. And the other is to get involved in specifically promoting the Yes on 37 in California, and labelgmos.org have the way to do that.
Your present book, Seeds of Deception, and now you're writing a new book. And when would this be launched, your new book, and published? Because it seems to be very important. It's catching a lot of people's attention on a very personal level. So it's connecting the whole issue about health and GMO.
Well, actually, the second book I wrote was called Genetic Roulette, and what we're doing now is not a book, it's a movie, because that'll get out more quickly and get the word out just in 90 minutes and change people's diet and change people's attitudes. And that's also called Genetic Roulette, and the subtitle is The Gamble of Our Lives. That'll be out in August.
And where can one purchase this? Is it going to be a DVD and from your website?
Yeah, you can go to responsibletechnology.org, or there will be a website called geneticroulettemovie.com where you can get information, see the trailer, and order the movie.
And can people do public showings of it? Like a lot of other films are being shown on film festivals or on communities they're airing?
Yes, one of the reasons we did it now for the California Ballot Initiative is that we're going to allow it to be shown freely by anyone, anywhere, so that the word gets out quickly.
On a personal level, when did you first learn about GMO, and how did you learn about it? And what is your background to even know about genetically modified organisms?
I was lucky to attend a talk by a molecular biologist who was describing the dangers of genetic engineering back in 1996, just before it was to be planted in my state of Iowa. And my background was more in communications and marketing and education, and realized people needed to learn about this, and so I started translating the science into English so that everyone could understand, and I never stopped.
A final question. Why do you think that here in America, people do not, I mean in Europe, in England, they said no. The population said no. Here in America, the greater percent of the people here, the public, do not even know what genetically modified organism is. What do you think is happening with America versus the rest of the world? Why are they so disconnected here?
It's the corporate control of the mainstream media that has been the problem. In Europe in 1999, 700 articles were written on a single GMO food safety scandal in February. And it was described by Project Censored as one of the most underreported events of the year in the United States. So the mainstream media was avoiding the hard data that GMOs are a scam and that they're dangerous, etc. And in fact, there was a press conference in 1999 showing fraud at the FDA where they lied about the actual knowledge that they had about the dangers of GMOs in order to get them on the market quickly. And the majors showed up to the press conference, but my friend was told it'll never be recovered, it'll be buried, and sure enough it was.
Wonderful. Again, thank you for your time and all your work. Thank you for the time to speak to me this evening. You're here at the symposium for Jeffrey Smith for GMO. Did you know about GMO before you walked in the door this evening? And if you did, what did you know about genetically modified organisms?
Sure, yeah, I learned some new stuff tonight, but you know, what I knew already really brought me here this evening. First heard about GMOs a number of years ago when I was listening to NPR, and they did a story on the Canadian farmer who I believe grew canola, and canola had recently at that time become genetically modified. And Monsanto had actually sued the farmer for infringing on his private, on their private property, infringement for copyright. And to me, that kind of, it made it come home to me, that this isn't just about the environment. Of course, we all know the environmental implications of GMOs at this point, whether it be the Gulf of Mexico, which at this point is very devastated from the impact of pesticide use. Roundup Ready crops are a big contributor to that use. And, but it goes really beyond that to the human impact. Whether it be the health impacts, potential impacts of genetically modified organisms, and Jeffrey talked about that this evening, or whether it be the impacts of Monsanto actually violating, in some cases, people's human rights. So, that's kind of the big picture of where I started to learn about it was through radio, through press, through looking it up on my own, doing a little research into the issue myself.
Max, would you eat GMO today, knowing what you know about it?
Well, let me tell you, it's a struggle every day when you go in the supermarket and almost every single product you go to buy a major brand company is genetically modified or contains some sort of genetically modified organism, whether it be soy lecithin in chocolate or whether it be, some sort of cornstarch or MSG in some sort of cracker or chip product. But for me personally, I avoid it. I try to eat fresh vegetables, nuts, grains that are either certified non-GMO by the Non-GMO Project, which Mark Squire here this evening from Good Earth Natural Foods has been an integral part of that project, and or through things that are organic. Organic products are not supposed to have genetically modified organisms within them. So, I make a conscious choice when I go in the supermarket, and as well as when I go to out to eat, to ask questions, to make comments in the grocery store on comment cards, and also to read labels.
A final question, how important do you think that this ballot is put on the ballot in November, that GMO is put on the packages, that it's there, and we can make an informed decision? How important do you think that is? Not only for you, but for everybody here in America.
I think this is one of the most important issues facing our state right now. California, people often say, leads the way. California has led the way on global warming legislation. It's led the way on renewable energy in many cases. We have the first community choice aggregation program here in Marin County. Marin County is one of the first counties to ban the growing of genetically modified foods. California really leads the way in so many areas. And if we can pass a statewide proposition, Prop 37, that mandates that GMO products are labeled clearly, then I think it can not only provide a choice for consumers here in California, but it can also lead the way to the nation actually adopting policies that also mandate the labeling of products. So I think that it's very important for anyone who cares about health impacts, environmental impacts, or human rights issues that we pass this here in California.
Jennifer, thank you for being here at the symposium today for GMO. The great Jeffrey Smith, Seeds of Deception. Did you know about GMO before you came to the symposium tonight? Or
I did know about GMO. I wasn't aware of some of the effects that are being seen in cattle now, and about the mounting evidence that really shows that there might be something we should be concerned about, and that we really ought to take a precautionary approach to it. So I'm coming away more motivated to really work to make this happen.
how long have you known about GMO, genetically modified organism, and what do you know about it?
I've known for years that it's been being introduced into our food, and I've also known that the amount of testing to prove that it's safe has been very limited. I know that there haven't been randomized controlled trials. I know that there haven't been long-term studies following the health effects of humans over time. And this is something that poses concern because there really isn't an evidence base that demonstrates that this is a safe technology. Yet it really is not a technology you can put back in the box.
Exactly. So would you recommend to your friends to eat GMO, and if they are eating GMO, and you love them, and you want to help them and get them informed, what would you do about that?
I would recommend that people avoid it as much as they can. I think it's an unproven science at this point. I think that there are genuine health concerns, and until it's been demonstrated to really be safe, we shouldn't be doing it at all.
So, this ballot, tonight it was an urgency that they were asking for help. What could you do on a personal level and your friends could do?
Well,
what possibilities is there to get this on the ballot? Make sure it happens.
I can endorse it. I can talk to my friends and neighbors, and I can talk to other local elected officials and work on getting other people to endorse it as well. And really work on raising the level of public awareness about this issue and the evidence around the suspected potential harm.
So you sound very passionate, very involved. I mean, was it all from this symposium, or did you come in with a little bit of that passion too and that intention?
Well, I came in sort of knowing a little bit about it and being generally in favor of it because I fundamentally believe in the public's right to know. But the evidence that I heard tonight about what's been happening with animals and what's been happening with people, I think that there is more evidence that's accumulating that really gives us a chance to reflect on that and to pause for a moment and really, hit the reset button on this and try to stop what we're doing right now with so much GMO and really label it and study it more and be really sure as we go forward.
Well, thank you for your passion and your purpose.
All right, thank you.
I'm so happy you're here at the symposium this evening with Jeffrey Smith, Seeds of Deception author. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Michael Allen. I'm a State Assembly member. I'm the Assistant Majority Leader for the State Assembly.
Okay, did you know about GMO, of course, before you came in the door this evening? And if you did know about it, how serious is it for you in your life?
Actually, it's a development I've been looking at for many years. Before I was an attorney, I was a registered nurse. And so I've always been aware of the health hazards for genetically modified organisms.
You've seen the data?
I've seen the data, and I've also seen the propensity we have in this country for saying, well, until you can prove it's unsafe, we're going to allow it into usage, as opposed to in Europe when you have to prove it's safe before it can be introduced to the population.
So what are you doing personally to get this initiative on the ballot in November?
Very good question. I mentioned to the audience earlier, I actually co-introduced legislation in the Assembly for labeling for GMOs, and we were not able to get it out of committee. So what I've done is I've been working with many of the activists. I came on as a very early endorser of this initiative, and as of yesterday, I've agreed to be an honorary co-chair for the campaign.
Congratulations, and thank you for all your work you do. And if someone wants to contact you to donate, to help out, how may they contact you? Do you have a website or an email you're giving out, or?
No, they can go to allenforassembly.com. You can find me that way.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for talking to me this evening. We're here at the symposium in Summerville, California. Jeffrey Smith has just spoken about GMO. What did you know about GMO before you walked in the door this evening?
I knew a little bit. I heard about the negative effects, but I didn't know the specifics about what the health problems were.
You did not know, absolutely, and put the association that could have health problems.
Yeah, I knew GMOs. I had heard GMOs had health problems associated with it, but I didn't know what the specific effects were on people having colitis, on people having different sort of health problems. I had just heard it was bad for your health. And so it was great to learn more about the specific cases, both in humans and in animals, that when they stopped eating GMO foods, their health problems went away. And I didn't know it was that extreme. that those sort of health effects were happening.
Are you presently eating GMO, genetically modified organism, or are you conscious that you don't want to eat it? So when you go to a restaurant and you're reading the labels, and that's why we're here this evening, because this ballot's going through in November, so labeling will be there and it'll be your informed choice. Do you want to buy this product with GMO or do you not want to? That's your right. So, were you eating GMO before?
I mean, it's hard without the labels to know what's GMO and what's not GMO, and I think that that's really important. That's why the ballot, that's why the initiative is on the ballot. But I think that, well, for me, I try to eat organic foods as much as possible, but I'm certain that there have been times when I have eaten genetically modified foods without knowing.
Jenny, thank you for taking a moment to talk with me after this incredible, informative symposium tonight. Jeffrey Smith, Seeds of Deception. Did you know about GMO before you walked in the door?
I knew something about it. Yeah, this was informative and had some more details about how it's affecting my health. So my concern is only great.
Why do you think that there's 50 countries that have banned it? And when it was being talked about in England, they said no. Why do not most of the general average person in America know about GMO? What do you think that is?
Well, we live in a corporate democracy. And corporations own most of the media and most of the mind diet of Americans. And so until we actually have an independent and community media system, Americans are going to be behind the 8 ball on being informed enough to design and define our lives and our future. That's why America is behind on this issue.
So they're not informed and they're kept, purposely it's happening because of the media and the everything they're reading and everything they're hearing. It's called the effect of just being that others are going to take care of them and they're just going along with the flow, where in Europe or in other countries they'll say no. They want to know.
Add something else. It's not just information that's crucial that we know what's going on, but there's something about our country that disempowers us and de-inspires us. It makes people feel small and not important. So we revert to the little things around us that we think we have some powerful relationship with. Our friends, our family, and our pets, and maybe our food. The food on our table might be an issue which will help to bring people back into society, back into the social relationships with our governments, our laws.
So basically what I'm hearing you say is that this balance and harmony is going to happen within each individual, and then on a collective level, on community, it will spread out. But if it's not happening within inside of oneself, where's the possibility of community?
Sure. Yeah, it does happen within each person, but real social change requires social movements. So I'm inferring, of course, that it takes people coming together, not just making the change individually. So there's a relationship between individual change within and social change together. They're not apart, they're one. It's one idea.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for taking the time this evening and speaking with me. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Damon Connolly. I'm a member of the San Rafael City Council.
And what is your position at the City Council?
Well, I just got reelected to my second term as a council member. I'm actually chair of the Sustainability Committee for the City of San Rafael, so very interested in green-oriented issues, health issues, so very interested in this topic.
So how long have you known about GMO, genetically modified organism? What do you know about it? And how is important in your life is this issue to you to be passed in November?
Well, I've got to tell you, I'm learning more and more over time. My wife is a big believer in organic food, buying local food. For me, it's been an education process, and one of the reasons I came to the forum tonight was to learn more. I'll tell you, as a result of the information I heard tonight, I've decided to endorse Proposition 37.
It's fantastic.
Yes.
And what did you hear tonight that was allowing you to make these decisions that you needed to make on an informed level?
First of all, it's a common sense initiative. Really, it's just giving people more information about the food they're buying. That's something they should have. The second big piece for me tonight was the health implications. What I heard tonight was surprising, if not shocking. It was information I was not aware of. To that degree about the health concerns related to GMO. So it just further enhanced my belief that we need to do something about this issue.
And if somebody wants to contact you to help, to spread this work, what you're doing, to help with other people to be informed about it, how can they contact you? Do you have a website? Or?
Yeah, please look me up through the San Rafael City Council. You can contact me online and come speak on the local level to us as officials and let us hear your concerns and beliefs on this issue. That's how we bring about change as we saw tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.